Welcome to Her Handmade Hustle Unplugged, a podcast for all women with a creative business who want to learn more about how to make money doing something they love. I'm Joanne Pearce, a female entrepreneur myself, 15 years experience running my own handmade stationery business, Vintage Twee. I'm an established seller on two of the biggest handmade marketplaces, so I've got a whole load of advice to share about how to start and run your own successful creative business. I'm also a wife and a mother, so I get the struggles of trying to do it all while you're raising a family. It's hard. Alongside running Vintage Twee, I'm also a mentor for other women like me who desperately want to work for themselves but just need that bit of support to get going and get their business dream off the ground. I'm a friendly northerner, I'm open and honest with a huge heart and a real fighting spirit, and I'm living proof that you can achieve anything that you set your mind to, even in the face of adversity. This podcast celebrates the selflessness, strength, and resilience of women in business. So if you're ready to ditch the 9-to-5 and learn how to start your own successful creative business, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome back to the Her Handmade Hustle Unplugged podcast. Thank you for being here and choosing to press play to listen to me today. So today's episode is a bit different and I want to take you behind the scenes of my weekend. Why? Why are you asking? Well, because it was pretty extraordinary. And it's not often that I say this, usually because it's the complete opposite of extraordinary. In fact, it is so unbelievably ordinary, doing the same things that my daughter feels comfortable with on the same days, at the same times. So there's never much to write home about. And quite honestly, I'm always glad when Monday rolls around and both the husband and the child have buggered off back to work and school and I'm alone again. If you're not along to this, then yes, you are my people. You know what I mean. Weekends are bloody hard work. Anyway, this one, thank God, was totally different, which was like a breath of fresh air for us. And I found myself surrounded by a whole sea of creative women and their stories of strength and courage. And everyone that I encountered reminded me of why we create and why we want to share it with the world. Because it's so much more than just wanting to make money from something we're good at. It's so much more than just seeing it as a way to escape our dull 9-to-5 job and start up on our own so we don't have to deal with arsehole bosses anymore. And it's way more than the fact it just makes us happy. I mean, of course it does. It does all these things, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. But our reasons for doing what we do, slogging our guts out, working 80-hour weeks for less than minimum wage at times, it goes way beyond surface level happiness and joy and desire. Like, the reasons are deep. And I'm talking things like heartbreak and grief, trauma and pain, like life-changing, earth-shattering events that change us in a way that we can't ever go back to who we were before. Do you know what I mean? Life quakes. I heard this term the other day, and it's by an author called Bruce Feiler, and he describes it as a significant, often unexpected and disruptive event that causes a major shift in a person's life, which then leads to a period of change and personal growth. And he says it's more than just a life change. It's a profound upheaval that can feel pretty devastating. Now, Bruce, good old Bruce, he also says that the average person has between about 3 to 5 life quakes during the course of their life. Now, he obviously hasn't met my family. I think he'd rewrite his whole book if he had, seriously. Double that, Bruce, and there's still plenty of time. I'm only 41. Now, I bet as you're listening to this, you can think of at least 3 life quakes right now. Yeah? I'll tell you mine. Number 1. Moving to America and marrying a man that I met on a plane, only to be told 2.5 minutes after we said our vows that he wished he'd never done it. Boom. Yes, I did say 2.5 minutes, not days or weeks or months or years, minutes. Number 2, my mum, my very, very best friend in the whole world, getting diagnosed with secondary breast cancer out of the blue, and watching her take her very last breath the day before my 34th birthday. Boom. Number 3, finding out that I carried the BRCA2 gene mutation while I was pregnant with Eden, and then opting in to a hellish journey of emotional trauma and physical pain just so I was around to see my daughter's 34th birthday. Hopefully. Boom! Number 4, standing in the playground at school pickup and reading a text from my sister to tell me that she had breast cancer, despite having the same preventative surgery as me, and supporting her from 200 miles away while she went through her relentless treatment plan. Boom. I mean, I'm not even going to continue. I've had my fair share of life quakes, but I know I'm not the only one. And the women that I've met since I started Her Handmade Hustle have utterly amazed me, and they've shown me their strength and courage from the minute that I've met them and we've had our first communication with each other. And I realised why we do what we do. We are using our creativity not just for happiness, but for healing. There's a reason behind why we create, why we make, and why we want to share it with the world. And that's because it's helping us heal in some way, most likely from one of these life quakes. So if you're sitting there listening to this and you've ever felt like your creativity is holding more than just your business, almost like it's holding your emotions, your healing, your identity even, then you are going to be able to relate to everything that I'm going to say today. Because the deepest parts of what we do and the very reasons why we do it are the ones we barely talk about. Yet these are the ones that need to be included in the story of your business. They are your superpower, and they will be not the things that destroyed you, but the things that act as the catalyst for your growth and becoming the person, the brand, the business that people will love to buy from. And I'm going to tell you today about some of the amazing ladies that I met this weekend. And I guarantee you that these stories are going to help you learn how to share your experiences and your life quakes in a way that will bring a whole new level of authenticity to your business. So, why was this weekend so profound for me? Well, I went to a maker's market near where I live. Now, this was partly for work, as I wanted to drop some leaflets in there, just to let the stall holders know about Her Handmade Hustle, and partly because, well, I love a good craft fair, and I always try to buy at least one thing to support the people who create. So, I went along with a friend and my daughter, left Dave at home. He was quite happy about that, I think. And we dotted some leaflets around on the tables and at the bar. And then I decided I'd go around to each stall to chat to the makers, because I wanted to find out a little bit about who they were, what they were selling, and see if I connected with anyone. And if I did, then I'd be brave and I'd tell them about Her Handmade Hustle and the podcast. And I'd leave them with one of my new business cards, which I got Eden handing out, which was a lovely touch. Everyone seemed to take them off her, which was very nice. Good tactic, get your kids to give you business cards out. But, there were some beautiful handmade things there. And I was just soaking up the energy. I was in my element, really. And if you go on Instagram, on my account, you'll see some of the things that I bought there. Go and check them out. They're absolutely beautiful. Anyway, something really struck me as I was talking to these women who were standing behind their tables, and they'd obviously spent weeks, months even, creating everything that was there before my eyes. But what really struck me was how much of themselves that they had poured into their work. So one lady I spoke to, she told me that she hadn't left the house for months after a terrible family tragedy where she'd lost not one, not two, but 3 family members in the same accident. So what did she do to get through it? She created. Now, this wasn't just a collection of beautiful stained glass decorations in front of me. No, every single one was loaded with emotions, and it contributed to the healing process of this lifequake that she had experienced. So her store wasn't just a business, it represented the recovery from something unimaginable, and it was a real turning point for her. And the next day, I met another amazing lady. Now, this time, we'd gone for a day out in Haworth, which is a beautiful little town in Yorkshire, which was home to the Bronte sisters and all things literature. So it was just like a little piece of heaven for me. I'm always at home in these kind of places. I absolutely love it. It's actually where I did my very first proper craft fair with Vintage Tree, my stationery business, like 15 years ago now. So it always will hold a special place in my heart. And it's like stepping back in time when you go there. You know, it's got the cobbled streets and the old-fashioned sweet shops. You must go if you never have. Anyway, put it on your bucket list. So we stumbled across this sign which caught Eden's eye, and it said on it, Fairyland exhibit this way. So we followed it, and it led us to this little church next to the Bronte parsonage, which is where the sisters used to live and study. Anyway, when we entered the church, there was just this sea of handmade fairy houses on the floor. Like, I'm not kidding you. They were all laid out in rows. So it looked like a little village when you walked in. I was absolutely amazed. So we walked around and we looked at all the fairy houses and the castles that had been constructed by what I presumed was the people from the whole of the village of Haworth. And I'm talking like probably over 200 fairy houses here, all different shapes and sizes. And the details were unbelievable, like crazy imaginative. They'd been designed inside and out to the very last detail. There was tiny little fairy mirrors made out of mirrored card and stained glass effect windows in the castles and rows of sparkly beads, all that had been glued individually to construct a beautiful wall around the houses. I mean, I was just amazed. And I was walking around this church hall with my jaw to the floor. It was like entering some kind of magical world. Now, of course, Eden spotted one that she liked, but I wasn't sure how it worked because it was there's a sign to say that it was an auction. So I was guessing that you bid a certain amount on the one that you wanted, and then obviously the highest bidder wins the fairy house. So I thought, right, I'm going to find someone to ask. But I could only see this one lady sat with a stick in the corner, and she was wearing a pair of fairy wings just to get into the spirit of the event, you know. So I thought, if anyone knows what the deal is here, it's the woman dressed as a fairy. So I made a beeline for her. So I said to this lady, oh, excuse me, I said, I was just wondering how this works. So do we choose a house that we want to bid on and we make a note of the number on its board, and then do we just come back for the main auction when it starts? Anyway, so she gives me this beaming smile and she gets herself up out of the chair with a stick and she says to me all excitedly, oh, which one is it that you like? So I pointed out this one that Eden had spyballed, which was one with this beautiful beaded wall that I mentioned before and some little cute miniature animals playing in this magical fairyland field. And I asked her, how much would it be if we just paid for it now? Because we probably wouldn't be there for the auction. We had to get home. So she looked at me and she said, oh, it's £1. Well, my jaw was well and truly on the floor now. £1? Like, that's for all my American listeners. That's like $1.50, okay? So I was in shock. And I went into my purse and I only had a £2 coin. So I just gave it to the lady and I said, please keep the extra pound. Like, this is worth way more than that. And I actually really wanted to give her more, but I didn't have any more cash on me. Anyway, she was absolutely thrilled. I'm so grateful with this £2 for this creation. And then from that moment on, I was just really intrigued and I wanted to know a bit more about what the hell this was all about. Even Dave was off making mental notes of the houses he liked and the ones he thought would look ace in Eden's fairy garden at home. And we were the only ones really there at that point. So I asked the lady, I said, are all these handmade by the people who live here, like for this exhibition? I said, they're just amazing. And she looked at me and she gave me an even bigger beaming smile and she proudly said to me, oh, I made them all. And I didn't think I could be more shocked at that point. I was like, what? She said that she hadn't been very well and she'd spent the last 2 years creating these masterpieces in her 1-bedroom cottage, ready to sell in church that day. And she had poured her heart and soul into creating every single thing that was there in front of our eyes. And I actually felt like I was just looking at the contents of her brain, her imagination, product of her pain and her recovery. It was actually a really moving experience. And I told her, I said, I have never seen anything like this. And I said how unbelievably talented she was. And she was so humbled. And she told me, like, thank you a million times. But you know what? At that point, I was on a mission, right? I was going to support this woman's dream, her bravery, her strength. And I was going to buy more goddamn fairy houses than one person would ever need. I mean, when I say we have a fairy garden, it's more like a few bits from B&M scattered over the rockery in the front garden with some mushroom solar lights, also from B&M, that make it look a little bit magical at least. But now I knew what a fairy garden should look like. So I was going to show this woman that her work was worth way more than she believed. So we went around and we picked out 3 houses that we really loved. And we gave her £5 for each of them, which was still a bargain, but we ain't made of money either. And I still had to get tea on the way home. But I think in total we spent 20 quid in the church hall that day. But I can't tell you the gratitude this woman had for our appreciation of her work. And she thanked me again and again. And as we were leaving, she said to me, she said, keep your little one young for as long as possible to enjoy these magical things. She blew me kisses on the way out. And at that point, I realised that we'd given her way much more than £20. We'd given her validation for what she had spent the last 2 years of her life creating. We'd given her the confidence to charge more for her work. And I really, really hope that we'd given her the emotional boost that she may have needed after what seemed like had been a really difficult time for her. Now, I've since followed this wonderful lady on Instagram, so I will put the link to her page on the show notes of this episode. So if you head into the description on whatever platform you're listening to this on, you'll find the link to her Instagram page there. She also has a TikTok account as well, but I'm not on that. So I'm following her on Instagram, but you can also search her out on TikTok. But do head over to my Instagram and see the photos that I took of these amazing fairyland pieces. And you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just a truly fabulous example of how people use their creativity to heal. And it made me realise that behind every handmade item we see, there's often a story that we don't see. Yeah, there's healing, there's grief, there's hope, identity. And yet we rarely talk about this side of business, do we? We talk a lot about the sales, about the branding, about growth. Yeah, and of course, those things matter. But I want to pause and I want to hold some space for the truth right now, because so many of us create from a place of emotion first and strategy second. So maybe you started because you were looking for a way to cope. Maybe you made something that helped you feel like you again during a hard time. Maybe this is your freedom, your voice, your rebellion, any of these things. And these stories that are unique to you are often invisible. But do you know what? They are the core of what makes handmade businesses so powerful. And we need to be weaving these stories into our business, because honestly, they're what your customers feel, even if they don't know why they're drawn to your work. Like, that's exactly what happened to me with the fairy houses. I didn't know what I was looking at for the first 15 minutes when I entered the church, and I just followed the sign. It said, follow the yellow brick road around the exhibit. But no, I had no idea. But I could tell that there was more to them than met the eye. And the closer that I looked at them, the more amazing details I saw. These weren't created to purely make money. I could tell that instantly. They weren't churned out with the sole purpose of selling to the highest bidder. Each one had been carefully constructed with purpose. They were loaded with emotions and intention and just love. Like, you could tell this lady just loved what she did. That it obviously had helped her through whatever tough illness that she was facing. No one would spend that amount of time and care on something that didn't hold a value for them other than money. They just wouldn't. And you'll only ever find out these real stories behind the creations when you ask. And if you're lucky and people feel able, they will share it with you. But your story, which may have been the result of a life quake or not, is your USP, your unique selling point. People don't need to know what you ordered from the coffee shop that morning on your Instagram feed. Yeah, they don't care about an insta-perfect flat lay of your products in colour and size order and your neatly organised desk. No, they want the good stuff, the real stuff, the stuff that is raw and emotional and is what got you to produce your masterpiece in the first place. Okay, you might not be comfortable putting your business all over social media, and that's absolutely fine. You don't have to go into specific details if you don't want to. But this is how I look at it. Why not use something bad or negative that's happened to you and completely flip it, turn it on its head, or at least tell parts of your story. Remember that people buy into the person before the product. And I know I always say this all the bloody time, but it's because it's true. Like, no one gives a shit about surface level stuff. It just gets lost on social media. What they care about is what it means to you to have a sale, why you created that particular piece, what was happening in your life at that time, what even made you start your business. And if you can talk about it, then do. Definitely do. I always say to my ladies, get good at being an oversharer. You know, one of those people who you say, oh, how are you to? In general, polite conversation. And then you wish you'd never asked because they start telling you that they've got a urine infection and they've not been able to weep properly for a week. Or their kid has come home with worms and the whole family has taken a shot of Ovex. Yeah, there's only one way I know about this stuff, isn't there? Let's face it. But it's like you get sucked into this swirling vortex of facts and information that you just did not need to know. So I'm not saying you need to tell your followers if you've got an STD or a parasite living in your gut. No, I'm saying if you can, open up some parts of your life that brought you to where you are today and let people hear the quiet story behind your work. So healing. Healing is a massive part of why creative people do what they do, why they create in the first place. And healing is a very relevant topic for me as I'm sat here recording this episode while my new nipples heal. Yep, I got my 3D nipple tattoos, hurrah! And I no longer have to stare into the mirror at 2 blank discs of fat that were grafted from my stomach and replaced my old broken nipples. So I actually now look relatively normal, which is just amazing. So just before the Fairyland event, I'd been to see a very talented lady called Lucy, who is a tattoo artist, but so much more than that. She's fully trained in the expert art of 3D nipple tattoos for people who have had mastectomies. Now, these aren't just any drawings of nipples. These are hyper realistic tattoos that make it look like you have actual nipples, like 3-dimensional nipples. It's crazy. Yeah, and a lot of people haven't heard about this service, but it is fantastic. I'd accessed this service from a fabulous charity called NIP, which is the Nipple Innovation Project, and they provide fully funded 3D nipple tattoos for people who have been affected by cancer or, like me, have had preventative surgery as a result of a genetic mutation. Anyway, they are ace. I can't even tell you. And I'm talking about my nipples here, right? So Lucy runs the Yorkshire Mastectomy Clinic, and it's a little private tattoo studio tucked away on her grandparents' working farm. And during the course of my procedure, Lucy and we had a really good chat, about everything really. I told her my shitty story, she told me hers. You know what it's like. It's like when you go to the hairdressers and it's like someone has cut your emotional jugular vein, isn't it? And everything just comes pouring out because there's someone there with a listening ear and an understanding smile. And it was a bit like that, really. The floodgates well and truly open. But Lucy is a creative woman with a real raw story that obviously fueled what she did on a daily basis. Her talent and the tattoos that she creates to give women and sometimes men their identity back, their confidence and their self-esteem is such an amazing thing. And there's a reason why she does it. She truly cares. And you can tell that from everything she does, from helping you through the process of being faced with all these nipple designs like you're at a shoe shop and you've got to pick out your next pair, to making you feel so comfortable when your boobs are eye level with her eyes and she's mapping out the design on you. I mean, to be honest, I don't think anything could ever come close to how uncomfortable I felt the morning of my mastectomies when I was stood in just a pair of paper knickers while my relatively young surgeon was eye level with my old tits, measuring and drawing on them with a Sharpie pen, and then standing in front of a bright light for a photo shoot in this very state, while 5 of his male colleagues watched the whole thing. Like, talk about humiliating. I think that's when shit got real for me. And, from that very moment, you kind of lose all dignity for the foreseeable future until you're healed and people finally stop asking to see or touch your breasts. So for me, seeing Lucy was emotional because it was the final step in this process and hopefully the last person who will ever touch my breast for a whole long time, husband and 5-year-old aside. But Lucy just had this empathy that women like me need, and people who've been through much worse than me too. And you automatically felt safe when you went into the room. And as we got talking, I learned that Lucy had her struggles too. She wasn't as carefree as her appearance may suggest. No, not by a long shot. But through her work, her art, and creating these amazing tattoos for people in the aftermath of a lifequake, she was healing. And it was also helping her. Now, I'm not going to say too much more about the amazing Lucy because lucky for us, she has agreed to come on the podcast soon to talk to us, which is going to be epic. I cannot wait. You can't miss that episode. I mean, I haven't recorded it yet, but I'm telling you now, it's going to be good. But when I was watching her create my new nipples and restore my identity, I realised that there really is something sacred in using your hands to make something real, especially when life feels a little bit impossible. It gives shape to feelings that don't have words yet. And the act of making, so whether it's tattooing or painting or sewing, stitching or building, whatever it is that you do, is often an act of reclaiming your time, your story, your body, your space in the world. I saw it in the fairy houses. I saw it in the way the tattoo artist I met had built a business around marking women's strength after trauma. I saw it in the quiet pride of the market stall owners. Making is an emotional labour and it's a strength in disguise. There's a reason why you do it. And that's not just to make money or as a way to pave a new life for yourself one day. Of course, that may be part of it. That may be your motivation. But before that, you started your business, or maybe are thinking of starting a business because of something that happened to you. And that thing can and it should be part of your brand story. So on that note, let's talk briefly about what this means for your business. Well, in case you hadn't guessed already, it means that your story matters. Not in a, you have to spill your soul online kind of way, like I mentioned before, but more in a way that says you get to own your own why, the reason why you're doing this in the first place. And that will be unique to every single person, which is why no matter if there's a million other people doing what you do, your business will always be different. Because I hear that a lot from the women that I meet. They always say, there's so many other people doing this. Why am I going to be different? Well, there's no other you. You have your own story, and it's your story that is going to make your brand stand out. And it also means that you're allowed to take your time. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to build something that supports your healing instead of draining you further, because that's not how it should feel, should it? We're doing this because we want to create a happier life, not to add to the stress. So don't put that pressure on yourself and rush your ideas because you're scared, or you think if you don't, you might miss the bus for the seasonal trend or the Christmas rush. Well, don't worry about it. Do it at your own pace and let the process of creating do what you set out for it to do in the first place. And that is heal you. And if you've been feeling stuck, you've been feeling overwhelmed, or you're unsure how to move forward, maybe it's not a strategy problem. Maybe it's just time to reconnect with the version of you who started all this for a reason, because that's what most of us need to do when we feel like this. And that's what I'm helping the women that I work with do. Yes, we talk business. Yes, we build plans. Of course we do. But we also create space for the real stuff. Because you know what? Your business doesn't work unless you do. And I want you to feel supported and seen and strong enough to keep creating in a way that feels good to you. So if anything in today's episode resonated with you, if you felt that tug in your chest, or you got that belly flip or those goosebumps at times when I was talking, then that means you get me. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I want you to go away now after you've stopped listening to this, and I want you to ask yourself, what is the story behind my work? What has creating helped you move through? So think about what you are comfortable leaning into, just a little bit, and possibly sharing parts of it with people. And write them down. Write down your life quakes. Write down the results of them. See them on paper. See how it's contributed to your journey to get to where you are right now. Because that is what your brand is about. It's not just the fonts. It's not just the colours or your logo. It is your story. Now, I'm going to be doing a podcast episode soon all about branding and how to build the best brand. So we're going to go into much more detail about that on that episode. So listen out for that one. Make sure you're following me on Substack. You'll get my weekly podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox the minute they are released. You'll be the first ones to hear them. It's totally free. You can also become a paid subscriber of my Substack if you would like. It's just £6 a month, and you can access all my bonus episodes and receive extra content to help build your business, as well as access the messaging feature on there. So you can drop me a message anytime and we can chat. I'll put the link in the show notes for anyone who would like to become a part of my Substack group. And if you're ready to bring more of you into your brand and get some support as you do it, then yes, of course, I would love to work with you. I've got a one-to-one session on my website under my pick and mix section, which is called Building Your Brand, and we do it together. We will help build your brand story together and look at everything that has got you to where you are today. This is so important in terms of building a recognisable and reputable and authentic brand that customers connect with. I'll leave a link in the show notes, as well as all the other ways that we can work together, which are all on my website, herhandmadehustle.co.uk, so go and check them out. That is all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. You are doing so much more than you think. And trust me, the world needs what only you can create. So please share this episode, if you can, just with one other person who you think would love to hear it. Take care. Until next time, I'll see you on the Her Handmade Hustle Unplugged podcast.